Hey everyone, welcome back to Project Celebrating Singles. We are here with my good friend Kate. Kate, you want to say hi, girl?
Hi.
Love it. So good to have you here. Really excited. And yes, if you are joining this podcast for the first time, there is a group of us who are on a mission to change the way that the world experiences singleness. And maybe for you, you can think about friends who are single and you're like, they're single. Why are they single? What's going on there? And you maybe have negative connotation related to that. And we just recognize that culture all around us tells us that you've only made it once you have a partner in life. And we just don't believe that that's true. And so we are here to empower, share stories from amazing singles like Kate, who's going to be showcased a bit today. And so, Kate, it's really awesome to have you here, girl. You and I, we met a few years ago, and you've got a Hawaiian tan on your face, which you are in Hawaii right now currently. I love that so much. It's great. So we met a couple years ago there, and I just got to shout you out, girl. You are someone who carries so much joy in life, regardless of what you're going through. And you're always so kind. And I think one thing I love about you is you're looking for any excuse to pump someone's tires up and compliment them, and not pump them up in a bad way, but like, or in a, like, I don't know, trying to please them or this or that. But you're just like, you see the gold in people and you just want to call it out all the time. And so I love that about you. I'm so excited that you're on this podcast because I'm like, oh, you have a lot in your life that you get to share with us, and just excited to glean from you today. So really looking forward to it. We did this with Christy last week. Christy's not here this week, but I would just love it if you could give a barometer, a singlesness barometer, in your single life these days. How are you shaping up? You doing well? Loving life? Loving your singleness?
Yeah, like right here. Hey.
I love that. Okay, girl. Yeah. What are you learning in your singleness these days? I'd love to hear it.
That life can be an adventure, like that life is fun, that you don't have to have a partner to be content. It's not like Miley Cyrus is, I can buy myself flowers. It's like having a community and having friendships to help build you. And from that, learning to branch out and meet people, and being content with myself, but also like letting people like love on me, and also finding like opportunities to be romantic and stuff. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah. Fun. I love that. Opportunities to be romantic. I like that because sometimes I think those romantic things can seem shameful if perhaps they're not long lasting. But I think even looking for romance in little things, going on dates, different things like that, it's beautiful. It's really powerful, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good, girl. I'm excited. Okay, before we hop into things a little bit more, I'd just love to hear, what are you up to these days? You're in Hawaii?
Yeah.
Yes.
I work at a coffee farm as a
Mhm.
tour guide, and farming, like landscaping, pruning, picking coffee, and I like to paint.
Wow.
And right now I'm painting turtles and stuff. So yeah,
I
daytime
love that.
tour guide, nighttime artist.
I love that. Yes, artists, you have beautiful art. So just really excited to have you here today. And let's get into it, girl. Okay, so, let's talk a little bit more about singleness these days. You're talking about contentment. Has that been a journey for you of finding contentment in being single? I mean, you're talking about community, which we have a huge value for, recognizing that we are wired, designed to have friendships in our lives, and if we isolate and live alone, well, then it makes sense that you want to do things that might not be healthy because we're just designed to relate to one another, right? And so how have you got to that place of finding more contentment in your life, would you say?
Well, I think a mistake, you kind of touched on it, is isolation. There's
Mm,
When you isolate yourself, and like one thing that I've learned is throwing nets out, not a fishing line. So like what I used to do was isolate myself and dare to trust one person at a time, or dare to put my hook out there to guys that um it was like like okay, I'll socialize and reach out, but only
mm,
from a protective place, and like
mm,
learning to be in a place where you feel safe and confident enough to socialize and put yourself out there, not just romantically but also socially. So I
right.
in this day and age, isolation can be a big problem. And so even like with romance, friendships, and so it is crucial to find a community that not only loves you but challenges you and supports you. And
Mm,
when you have that like family aspect, you have that protection where you can throw a net out there rather than a fishing line. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Wow. Yeah, absolutely. That makes sense. I'm so curious. How did you get to the place where you recognized you were maybe isolating? Was there something that initiated that you're like, I'm just not going to enter into friendship or community? How did you get to that point of isolating? And then how did you get to a place of like, oh, I should start stepping out and branching out into community and friendships?
Well, I think a lot of problems that we have in our lives can come from childhood. For me,
Mm.
there was a problem with rejection, and
Mm.
I got rejected a lot growing up at school, mostly, and somehow that kind of came into my singleness, where it's like, why even bother? I'm just going to get rejected, and
Wow.
when I started healing from that, when I started growing and not using rejection as a shield, but dropping it and like putting myself out there, like learning to discipline myself in a way where I changed my thinking and I changed
Mm.
the trauma into healing process. Does that, I forgot what the question was, but I hope I answered
Yes.
it.
No, no, no. That totally, yeah, that makes so much sense. I love that you said like the trauma, you turned it into healing, and got rid of the negative mindsets related to that, right? The lies that you're believing, which is awesome because I really want to go there and talk about this. So you talked about rejection, and I want to talk a little bit more about labels and things that we can receive. Like you said, oftentimes these things are things that we receive when we are younger and they land on us and really we give them authority in our lives to dictate our actions
Mm.
and to dictate how we view ourselves, how we view the world around us, right? And so, do you want to share a little bit more about labels, and we can chat about that for a few minutes?
I absolutely. I think, like for me personally, a label that I kept getting was that I'm weird, that I'm
Mm,
stupid, that no, I wrote it down. There's something
love
wrong.
it.
There's
Mm,
wrong with me, and it was both from people, but also myself that
mm,
kind of influenced that thinking. It's incredible how a label can tamper with your identity if you're not careful. Um,
mhm.
so I kept on feeling like I need to prove myself so I don't get rejected. Or why reach out? I'm just going to get rejected. I'm going to isolate myself and just let certain people in that I can trust. Um,
Yes.
so yeah, labeling, it can be either empowering or damaging. And I'm not talking about labeling like putting people in a box, but saying you are incredible, you are worthy to be loved, and like speaking like positive labels over you. And but you remove those negative labels and replace it with positive stuff. Does that like yeah?
Yeah, yeah, no, that totally makes sense. And I think one thing to recognize in this, FYI, y'all, there's a dog on this interview. Okay. He barks a lot, so he's sitting on my lap. So shout out the celebrating singles.
It's a
Benny is
little
not dating
dog.
anyone. So let's just hope that he stays quiet for the next few minutes. Shout out, Benny. Um, yeah, I think one thing we really need to note with this, though, is, and we need to acknowledge that words have power, right? Everyone's favorite saying, sticks and stones may break my bones, but your words will never hurt me or something. Such a lie, right? Like, I'm sure we can all think of a way that someone spoke something over us and it has pierced us and it has marred us in a painful, bad way that has damaged us, and vice versa. Like you said, on the flip side, where you get to start affirming people and really calling out the good, the gold in them, which is what I said that you love to do at the start of this episode, And so I think it's really important for us to recognize that words do carry power and authority to really help or to hurt people. And yeah, I mean, yeah, the things that happen at school, even that you flippantly say to other kids to bully them, and it's just the cool thing to do, but you don't recognize, like, oh my goodness, we're actually really hurting people, and vice versa, right? And so, yeah, those labels can really mark us. And like you said, they are things that we can carry from a really young age, from mom and dad, or peer groups at school, or some stranger on the internet, right? And so, I think it's so important for us to recognize these labels that we're carrying. Um, and I think going back to how they shape our experiences, right? So things that we experience actually, they shape our beliefs, what we believe about us, what we believe about the world. And then, like you said, what we believe is going to happen, our expectations of life and how it will continue to play out. So even your example with rejection, right?
Mhm.
Is you felt rejected when you were younger. And then you thought that people were just going to keep rejecting you in the days to come, right? Yeah. And so I think it's really, it would be good to do like a label check almost, like to sit down. It's like, what labels am I actually sitting under in life right now that are not okay? That maybe mom or dad put on me, that, a sibling, a friend at school, or even a past partner, someone you dated, because those things are actually shifting like lenses and the way that we view ourselves in the world around us, right?
I love the quote. I don't know who said it, but it says, "Watch your thoughts; they become your words. Watch your words; they become your actions. Watch your actions; they become your character. And watch your character; it becomes your destiny." It's
Wow.
so like your words have power, and also like confronting any beliefs that would enforce those words, like, because I'm not just saying I'm stupid. It's like, well, why am I saying that, and
Hmm.
what memory triggered that? Like, there's an exercise I like to do where if I feel triggered, that's the word these days,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
how old do I feel in this pain? And I'm like, I feel like I'm 9. Okay, what happened
Mm.
when I was 9? And there's a memory locked with that. And forgiving people that enforce that painful memory, and even forgiving myself, and like reversing that memory and finding healing to have a new belief and have a new like healing from that. Like, so it becomes a stepping stool instead of like 3 steps forward and 4 steps back, or whatever that phrase is saying. But yeah.
Yes. Wow, that's so good. I love that. How old do I feel when you're being triggered? That's so powerful. Yeah, that's really important and clearly takes a lot of self-reflecting and time set apart to be able to do that. But I really want to touch point on one thing that you said there is that you forgive the people who have wronged you in that memory, or, forgive yourself even. And that's one thing we actually haven't talked about on this podcast, is forgiveness. And so, yeah, let's go there for a few. What
Yeah,
does forgiveness look like?
let's go there.
Let's do it, girl. I love it.
Well, I think a lot of people know this phrase, like unforgiveness is like drinking poison and expecting the person that offended you to die when really it's killing you. And it seems cliche, but it's very true. And like,
Mm,
a lot of people think forgiveness is weakness, that you're part of what they did. No, it's freeing you. It's a choice. And so, like,
right.
I like what Corey Ten Boom said, like, the lady that was in the concentration camp in World War II, she did a lot of teaching. And there was a German soldier who approached her and asked for forgiveness. And in that moment, she didn't want to forgive him. She felt like, like, get out of my face, and but she's like, I forgive you. And forgiveness is like the key that unlocks the door to healing, because sometimes forgiveness can be magical and like, okay, we're good and stuff, but sometimes it takes time. Forgiveness is literally the choice to unlock the door to healing, where it's a walking process where
Mm,
have to walk out that forgiveness and just like kind of siphon that poison out of you. Does that make sense? Like, it's
yeah.
a very powerful thing where it's not naive, it's not weak, but you become the child like in you that you were created to be, in a sense where you're not naive, but you're empowered through the forgiveness.
Mm,
You're growing from that forgiveness, where next time, and there will be a next time, when someone slanders you or hurts you, you have the equipment to deal with it, and you have that upgrade where you're like, okay, I've been hurt before, this person is hurting me, because hurt people hurt others. Like, it's just the way it works. And so it's like, you all right, having the confidence
yes.
where if someone says something to you, if someone does something to you, you can understand that, it's not personal. It is personal, but at the same time, it's like, I'm going to be okay because I walk in forgiveness. So, yeah.
Yeah, girl, that's so good. I love that. That's right. Mic drop right there. Snap those fingers. That's great. I love that. No, it's so true. Hurt people do hurt people. I think it's easier to forgive someone when you recognize that they are not operating at the way that they could be operating. Like, oh, this person really is in pain, and that's why they're responding to me like that. And so I think coming from that understanding lens when you are hurt. And I think recognizing that, man, we are just in a really messed up world, unfortunately. And people have been through a lot, and therefore they're going to respond in ways that are not healthy and are not okay, right? Because I think one thing to recognize with forgiveness is like, you're not justifying what this person did to you by any means. And you're not letting them get away per se, but you're letting that not control you anymore. You're letting that not consume you anymore. And I love what you used about your example about the memory healing, because if you forgive that person, then you're free to grow up back to this beginning place that you are now at. You know, this memory, maybe you got the idea, wow, this feels like I'm 9 years old, but then you can forgive and release that person who did that when you were 9, and you're free to come back to this present place, right? And have a healthy and whole heart. And I think that's really good.
I'm really amazed at how, I consider what I would be like if I hadn't chosen to forgive. Um,
Mm,
because it was actually like kind of during the pandemic when I did a lot of like thinking and processing, and I'm like, I'm pretty jaded. I'm like, and like, yeah, like, and so like, it was so funny how the pandemic, the kingdom of isolation, where I come out like, oh wow, I need to put myself out there, and like
wow.
learning to forgive is it takes courage to forgive. It takes courage to trust again, because when you've been hurt so many times, when you have the cycle where things just keep on happening and happening and happening, and you're like, am I cursed or something? And like, but when you break that wheel and you find the right people who are drawn to your healing, because when you have unforgiveness, it's kind of like a magnet. There's this vibe that people are drawn to. Like when you carry that healing, people in that process will be drawn to you too. When you have unforgiveness, uh, misery loves company. You have people
Yeah.
are drawn to that and everything. So it's literally changing the atmosphere, changing your vibe, and
Hmm. Hmm.
yeah,
Hmm.
like a vibe magnet. You know, it's interesting how that works. When you start growing and healing and confidence, there are people that get drawn to that. It's really fun.
Right. That's so good. Yeah. Yeah. And I like what you're saying about too, like it takes a lot to begin to trust again others and to let people in to that place where you've been so wounded. But I think recognizing also too with forgiveness, forgiveness doesn't equal, reconciliation. And reconciliation and forgiveness are two very separate things. Reconciliation is between both partners, right? Where there's forgiveness, mutual understanding, and they come back together. And, there's a beautiful journey of healing, maybe even redemption from past things that have happened. And that's lovely when that happens. But you can still forgive without being reconciled to someone. You don't ever have to talk to the person again, perhaps. And maybe you never will, but you can still be free in your heart from what they've done to you, whether good or bad. And I really, because sometimes people are like, oh, I'm never going to see that person again. Why would I forgive them? Like they're not in my life. They're not a part of me anymore, but you're actually still drinking that poison. Yeah, get it, girl. Totally. Right. And like you have these walls built up, it's self protection, right? That you are operating in by doing that. And, I also think of unforgiveness. It's like a jail cell of darkness, of pain, right? And then what actually comes from that? Oh, man, let's use this for an example. If you don't forgive the person who labeled you and rejected you, all of a sudden you're sitting under that rejection and you can't even step out and fully be who you are. So that's why it's so important. And I love what you say, that it's a process. It doesn't have to be a one moment and you're good. Sometimes that happens for people. That's awesome. But it's just good to recognize, oh, I'm being triggered by this again from this person from my past, and really taking that to heart and being like, man, what did they do to me? How can I forgive and release them, and move on? And I think really embracing the process of it, because we all are in process, right? And people are going to react to the healing journey differently.
I had like two roommates once that treated me very poorly, and like one of them, we'll call her Stacy. And like she had temper tantrums, and if you did anything to make her angry, she would get in these blind rages and basically throw all your stuff around. But then my other roommate, she borrowed my phone to call her Samoan boyfriend. And the phone bill was $800. And and
Wow.
and when I confronted her about that, she's like, "Oh, you're just being racist." I'm like, "No, I'm not." Like, but like, and I didn't get a dime back, and so I had these two roommates that were, and I had to be with them for almost a year. It was complicated. I had to be with them. I couldn't just move out or leave and stuff. And after that, I realized that I had so much unforgiveness that I thought I forgave, but the pain was still there. And like, I began being very distrustful. There were times people would say something or ask to borrow something. I'm like, no. and, and like learning to, walk through the healing process, because that scenario took time. It took time. I couldn't just go, okay, I forgive you for not paying back $800, and I forgive
Right.
you for throwing all my stuff around my room every time you threw a tantrum, and I forgive you for making me nervous every time I hung out with you, you know, and like, it took time, and I had to learn to let go in a way where, um, I haven't talked to them in 10 years, but I wish them well. I hadn't, I'm not buddy buddies with them anymore. But yeah, I'm at that place where, like, when you asked me to bring up forgiveness to scenarios in my life, I actually had to think about it because I moved on. It doesn't haunt me anymore.
Right.
It's not part of my identity anymore. It's not a shield anymore. And I'm
Mm.
like, it's kind of like what I said earlier. I'm like, wow, what would have happened if I chose not to forgive? How jaded I would have been, how distrustful I would have been. But at the same time, being educated from that, where, okay, let me ask you, who are you calling to borrow my phone? Or like, okay, this person has tantrums. I need to, like, being educated now in a way where I know that I'm worthy to be loved. Those things were not my fault, because there were times I'm like, was there anything I could have done differently? No. So there were things that I had to grow in. But now, because I chose forgiveness, I'm upgraded and I'm walking from healing and freedom. So there's such an incredible growth when you forgive, that your identity completely transforms because of that. It's really interesting.
Yes, that's so good. And thinking about how, like you said, that could have jaded you in a really painful way. It could have shaped your entire living situation in the years to come, of who you spend time with, what that looks like. And I mean, like you said too, you've also learned from that experience, right? And so it's amazing how there's so many takeaways in the midst of things that happen to us that we never plan to happen, and we have the option to either get bitter or we can get better. I love thinking about that. It's either an irony, you get bitter or you get better, right? Because wild things are going to happen to us no matter what. And we cannot necessarily change a lot of those, but we can change how we respond, right? And it's so important for us to recognize that no matter what is coming our way, that to the best of my ability, I want to walk out in a way that, like, I'm not marred by the world, by the way that they respond to me, by the things that they do, that my values, I'm still able to hold to them. And I'm able to walk with really just like I don't know how else to describe it other than like a clean heart, of like, I just want to be like right before people and live out my life to the best of my ability in a place that keeps me like whole. Otherwise, don't want to be drinking that poison, don't want to be getting bitter, any of that, right? And so I love that, Kate. And it's just really important to emphasize that it's a process and it's okay to be in process. I think the process we forget, that's one thing we think about here is like, it's a journey. This is a journey. Some days your singleness and walking in forgiveness and all this stuff is like, woohoo, easy, let's do it. And then, man, other days you are in your woes, right? And that's when you need your friends to lift you up, remind you of who you are, and just come alongside you, right? But I think we so resent the process at times instead of finding beauty in it, right? Yes. Yes. Yeah. And so I think, how do we get to that place of enjoying the journey, right? Like, we're not exactly where we want to be just yet, but we're so much farther than where we started out, months, years ago, all of that. Is there anything else that you want to touch base on?
I think like knowing who you are, knowing your identity, that you are worthy to be loved. And what happened in the past doesn't define you. What you do now defines you. You can turn life into a lesson or it can be a mess. And when
Mm-hmm.
people throw labels at you and they don't match what your identity is, don't receive it. Just
Mm-hmm.
and take time throughout the day, or whether waking up in the morning or getting ready to go to bed, check yourself. Like, is there anything that I need to remove that people have spoken over me, and replace it with truth? This is who I am. This is who I am. Not this. Whether it's taking a shower and like washing all of the slander off, any negative labels, look yourself in the mirror and say, this is who I am. Whether you believe it or not, because like if you have a best friend and they say this stuff to you, like they said this about me, and you're like, girl, don't believe that. Why would you believe that and stuff? But like kind of picture yourself like you're talking to your best friend. Like, they said that about you? No, I love you. You're amazing. Why would you listen to that? No, no, just speak life over yourself, because words have power, and say it in your eyes. There's something about windows or eyes to the soul where you just enforce that truth until you believe it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's so good. And we've talked about neuroplasticity on the podcast, like the ability for our brain to change based on what we think, whether it's good or bad. And so I love that you get rid of those negative things. We've talked about exchanging lies for truth. Yes, just affirm yourself in the mirror and own it. It's so important, and it's can seem so cheesy and in the moment a little bit uncomfortable, but then you get used to it. You're like, yeah, this is cool, because really, as you think you are, so you are. You think about the most arrogant, prideful person, they're like, oh yeah, I'm amazing, and they're killing it, dude. Like, maybe we don't want to be that person, or you do, cool, that's great, but they are so assured, like they're so sure of who they are, and they love that, and that's so cool. So it's like, man, we want to come to that place of confidence where we're not marred from our past, where we forgive people. Yeah, and then going back to, replacing lies with truth, which Christy touched base on in other episodes. It's like one great way to get rid of those lies is where did this lie originate, as we talked about, right? And how can I forgive someone related to where that lie originated? And so I think just even, yeah, a major takeaway from this podcast episode would be like, hey, what are ways that people have hurt you, that they've wronged you? Who do
Mm-hmm.
you need to forgive? What do you need to sit with? And thinking about like, what are ways that they actually have hurt you, and being able to sit with that and then release forgiveness to them, And I think these are mornings that they can take, a Saturday morning with yourself in your journal of really processing through these things and just beginning to uncover that. And obviously too, I mean, we're here to help people on their, like I said, Saturday adventures with themselves, but some of the stuff is way deeper, and you need to get therapy. You need to go see a counselor, right? Because there's some wild things that we've experienced, whether good or bad, and people might need further assistance with this, So we want to definitely leave room for that with whatever that looks like. And then also with the labels too, right? Getting rid of those negative labels, forgiving the people. And like you said, speaking those new things, which
Mm-hmm.
is great. And I like to think about things, you're like, oh, take a shower, like even, or like pretend you're taking a shower or something, like that makes it more fun, when you're just like, oh yeah, that was something that was like sticking to me, that label, like it felt like it was there, that I was wearing it. So it's like, just get that thing off, and making it more of like a fun thing to do as opposed to something that's heavy and uncomfortable.
When you do an action or speak stuff, like I think a lot of adults, we tend to bottle it up and we mentally go through it and stuff, but we need to let it out. You see kids like verbally expressing their frustration. You see kids running up and down because they're just so upset or something, and like, I'm not saying throw tantrums in Target or anything, but like where you have this like ability, like go to the gym, or like um, you let it out. You kind of find a way to let it out, and then you like, and so like if you just do it mentally, you're bottling it up. Make sure that you speak it and act out, like kind of let the frustration out and let the healing in. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah. We've talked about that on other episodes too, about fully expressing and sitting with your emotions. And yeah, good. Hey, Kate. Well, thank you so much for joining the podcast today, girl. Just really grateful to glean from you in your life and all that you've experienced and give some more tools to the audience. So it's great to have you today.
You too.
Right on. Yeah, you got it. And if you're listening, you made it this far, I just want to encourage you. We have an online curriculum where you can get 11 videos with 3 activations for your own life journal exercises, things to start processing through a few of these things. If you've been inspired and touched by the podcast in any way, or you're like, oh, I want to learn more about this, I want to encourage you, check out celebratingsingles.com. For less than one therapy session, you can get some great tools and insight into your own life to embrace your single journey a little bit more. So thanks for stopping by, and we'll catch you next week. Bye-bye.